Ladies and gentlemen, I just found one of the sickest burns of Andrei Jikh I have ever read in my entire life. Now, if you watch Andrei Jikh, he has very well edited videos, very professional. He does really cool card tricks, and he talks about general personal finance topics. Basically, if it's trending, he talks about it. That's going to be good for your investing success, right? Well, there's this Redditor on the r/Meet/Kevin subreddit called Oil Spills Are Good. Interesting username there. But this guy laid out one of the most fantastic summaries of Andrei Jikh I have ever read. So we're going to read this together, and I'm going to give you my commentary, because this guy is a massive clown. He should be banished from YouTube. He should not be giving any kind of financial information, and he's a massive incompetent clown.
But hey, he has good editing, right?
So let's read this. The worst financial influencer is a magician who got his start by promoting his tax-inefficient dividend stock portfolio. With the success he gained from YouTube, he began to diversify his investments into high-class bollocks like NFTs, pyramid schemes like Terra Luna, overpriced real estate, whilst promoting scam cryptocurrency exchanges such as FTX and BlockFi. This is an influential YouTuber with over 2 million subscribers who is called Andrei Jikh. The first sentence was the number one reason I started to question this guy, okay? Andrei, yeah, he talks about crypto. He's cool about it, whatever. But he seems to have this fascination with dividends. And I remember him showing his portfolio, his dividend portfolio. He had a massive amount of money invested in Robinhood. Now, I have a Robinhood account. It's for fun and speculation. But for the love of God, I would not have the vast majority of my stock portfolio inside of something like Robinhood, because the app is designed for you to trade. Well, he shows his portfolio, right? And he's got hundreds of different stocks in there. And he talks about the passive income generated by dividends. I have to say this 1,000 times. Dividends just create a taxable event and don't generate passive income. It is a forced stock sale that generates a taxable event. That's it. There is nothing special about a dividend. And if you like dividends because of passive income, why don't you just buy a stock without dividends and then sell a portion of it every quarter? It's the same effect. But of course, Andrei Jikh gets into more of that, because dividends aren't as popular as other things like NFTs and crypto. And if you want to make it big on YouTube, you got to shill the worst garbage that everybody else wants to hear about. And hey, if it screws over your fans, who cares, right? The first problem, and the way he began his YouTube career, is with his dividend portfolio. Dividend portfolios are an objectively horrible way to grow your wealth. I kind of agree, and I don't. It's not the worst way, but it's not the best. If you only buy dividend stocks, you're missing the hundreds or thousands of stocks that don't pay dividends. Dividends are forced stock sales. That's it, okay? A great company doesn't have to pay a dividend. A crappy company can have a massive dividend. You got to be careful and look at what you're buying and not be sucked in by the yield. The way investors achieve their return with dividend stocks is through dividends. This is a form of income that companies return to investors. As it is a form of income, you will be taxed on your return like it is a second job. Not necessarily true, depending on whether the dividend is qualified or not. That is to say, at a higher rate than you pay on your main income. That's not true, but I'll forgive this guy, okay? It depends on the type of dividend. You can have ordinary dividends that are taxed at your highest marginal rate. They add on to your income. Or you have qualified dividends that have preferential rates. We're not going to get into the details. You can watch my old videos on the difference between a qualified and a non-qualified dividend. It's based on what you're buying and the holding period, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that's not necessarily true. That isn't to say that dividend portfolios don't have their place. It all depends on your stage in your investing life. For those in their 20s and 30s, you should be focused on more tax-efficient strategies like capital growth, or buying a total market index where you own every stock in the country you're investing in or in the world. You can own dividend stocks. There's nothing inherently wrong with dividend stocks. Focusing on dividends by themselves, I think, is stupid. But if you buy every stock in the country or every stock in the world, you're getting everything. As you get older, dividend stocks make more sense as a way to preserve the wealth you have as you begin to withdraw it. I disagree with that, but I'm not going to go into that in more detail. We're talking about Andrei Jikh here. From the success of his YouTube career, he began to look for different investments. Instead of being a sensible investor, the moron decided to settle on monkey photos that you can copy and paste yourself. He invested in long con humbugs like Terra Luna, which promised a staked return of 20% for those invested in it. Now, Andrei, and I'm going to react to his other video where he apologizes for BlockFi, sorry. But Andrei is a massive shill of cryptocurrency. Do you want to know why Andrei Jikh likes cryptocurrency? Because it went up a lot. That's it. That is his only justification. He could say 100,000 things. I could read the minds of these crypto shills. It went up a lot, therefore it's a good investment. And if you don't buy crypto or have a part of your portfolio in it, you just must be an idiot, right? Yeah, just like FTX and BlockFi. Yeah, it's stupid, huh? But right off the bat, you can tell that Andrei is not a sophisticated investor. He's a massive clown because he was getting staked returns of 20%. If you're getting a 20% return for nothing, basically, something fishy's going on. Remember, the S&P 500 has only returned 10% historically, and this clown is getting 20% buying digital clown coins on a clown exchange. I wonder if this is legit. As long as new customers came on board and themselves brought along 2 new customers with them. Sounds like a Ponzi scheme. Like any sane and reasonable investor, he lost $1 million when he put 30% of his portfolio into Terra Luna. But he got a high yield, probably of fake tokens. He knows a lot about portfolio allocation, as you can see. That's why he has 2 million subscribers, guys. That's how it works. He's got good editing. From the cryptocurrency scum money he had left, he decided to hold it in FTX to the tune of $500,000. I guess after you lose all your money once, maybe you learn your lesson? Not Andrei Jikh. I know Russians only learned about capitalism 30 years ago. Okay, whatever. We'll skip that part. However, not all his investments have been bad. He bought a house for himself outright in Vegas. That was when the 30-year fixed rate was just 3.5%. Given how incompetent of an investor he has otherwise been, this may have been not the worst choice, as it means his money isn't a real investment. I guess you could agree. I could agree with that. Even if he loses everything else, which seems likely, he will still have his home at a bare minimum. But if he loses his YouTube income stream, what's going to happen with those property taxes, man? You gonna be able to afford that with your card tricks? The second house he owned was an investment property. This is where it gets good. To put it kindly, he got hosed. He paid $1.3 million for a property in Las Vegas. He intended on originally renting it out for $7.3 thousand per month. That would be a gross yield of 6.5%, which it wasn't. Not only were his rent assumptions stupidly generous, he mortgaged it up with a floating interest rate. Why would you do a floating interest rate during historically low interest rates, you massive freaking clown? Of course, interest rates were going to go up after that massive clown market. So instead of getting a fixed rate mortgage where your payment doesn't fluctuate, except for increases in property tax and insurance, he just gets a floating rate. Oh, wow. Because I'm saving money on inflation and interest somehow. That was his justification. What a freaking clown. This is someone who is giving financial advice on YouTube. This is a disaster, and an absolute disaster. This is gross. This is part of the reason I do YouTube, because I can't believe this stuff. These are just his investments. This isn't to speak for the abysmal business decisions he has taken. He was happy to promote FTX. When FTX was going under, he promoted BlockFi, which is associated with FTX. I believe FTX bailed out BlockFi. This massive clown, at the end of the video where he apologizes for FTX, shills an affiliate link for BlockFi, where I'm sure he gets compensated in fake tokens for convincing people to put their money in there. And he's like, oh, make sure you take the Bitcoin off and put it in a cold storage wallet. Well, in order to get the rewards, don't you have to deposit money into BlockFi first? And if you do that, that's where you get your money potentially stuck when it went bankrupt, which it did. Good job there, Andrei. When both these sponsorships went away, he moved to promoting another scam, established titles. At the end of the day, if Andrei Jikh didn't have YouTube revenue to subsidize his poor investment decisions, he would be done for. Sounds like a lot of YouTubers out there. He is ultimately no different to you and I. He's dumber than the average person. His failed investment record rivals that of the worst posters in Wall Street bets. Well, I've seen worse, but whatever. The best advice you could do is listen to Andrei and then do the exact opposite of what he recommends. An inverse Andrei, if you will. I would say I disagree with that, okay? Just because he says buy dividend stocks, you shouldn't buy growth stocks or stocks that don't buy dividends. And just because he says, oh, you should buy crypto, doesn't mean you should short crypto. Investing is very simple. You max your tax advantage accounts and you buy broadly diversified index funds. But holy freaking crap, this was a great summary of the absolute investment disaster that is Andrei Jikh. But like I said, at the end of the day, it does not matter what happens to these YouTubers. They can make the worst investments possible and they get nothing but more money, more subscribers, and more accolades. That's how this freaking disgusting world works. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'm going to move on to my BlockFi response, and I'll talk to you later. Cheers!